Good morning, Christian Center. How are you? Good to see y'all. Welcome, welcome. Thanks for being here this morning. My name is Troy, and I'm one of the pastors here, and just grateful that you guys have shown up this morning. Are you grateful? We should be. You are in Steamboat Springs in the summer of 2025. Does it get better than that? I don't know. Man, I really enjoyed hearing those stories of change and life change. And one of the things I say is that some of the healthiest people in our church are a part of Regen. They're going through this program. It's basically a pretty good in-depth Bible study to help you find out who you are in Christ and what Christ has done for you and how He can whom the Son sets free is free indeed. And He wants to bring freedom in any part of your life. Maybe you deal with guilt. Maybe you just got that old Catholic guilt that just kind of follows you around all the time. Or maybe you got some anger issues or you got doubts. This is a great place. Check that out on Monday nights, 6:30. And then hope you'll find some hope there. And then, hey, I just want to give a shout out to all of you who last week signed up to help serve in your church. I appreciate that. It was a great response. Thank you for stepping up. If you missed it or you're like, oh, I forgot to text, let us know. We'd love to help you do that. And then lastly, I just want to give a shout out to Kyle and our youth ministry. They went to youth camp. We had a bunch of middle schoolers. Did any middle schoolers go to camp? Are you here? Yeah, right, that whole row. Glad to have you guys. You got fun? And they're in church on Sunday morning. That's good. Did anybody get any sleep? Not much. Could use a little more. All right. Well, anyway, but thanks for being. I'm going to jump into this message by starting it off with a joke. Is that okay with y'all? Ooh, apparently we need to break this up a little bit. So this is one of my favorite all-time church jokes. This is good. This woman, this lady dies. That's not a good way to start a sermon, but she dies and she goes up and she arrives at the pearly gates of heaven, and right there is St. Peter, and he welcomes her, and he's like, hey, welcome to heaven. And she's like, wow, this is amazing. And he's like, well, in order to get in here, you have to be able to do one thing. You need to be able to spell one word correctly. She's like, really? That's it? Yeah. She's like, well, what's the word? He says, I want you to please spell love. And so she smiles and she spells it Love. And Peter's like, good job. You're in. Come on in, and welcomes her inside. And so he kind of gives her the grand tour, takes her all over the place, shows her all the things that are going on and where to find this and that. And they don't get all the way, but he's like, that gives you kind of pretty good sense. But he says, hey, listen, I got to ask you a favor. I hate to do this, but I got a meeting I got to go to. Would you mind just kind of staying here at the gate and just kind of watching the gate for a little bit until I get back? And she's like, sure, no problem. So he leaves, and a little while later, an unexpected visitor appears, her husband. And she's like, whoa, what are you doing here, man? She's like, this is so weird. You always said that you would live 20 years longer than me, that I didn't live a very healthy lifestyle, but here you are. What are you doing here? And he's like, yeah. He said, you wouldn't believe my luck. She's like, what do you mean? He goes, well, after you passed away, I decided to get remarried. In fact, I married that little nurse that took care of you while you were in the hospital. You remember her? And she's like, oh, yeah. Yeah, we got married. And the day after our wedding, I won the lottery. Like $5 million. I won the lottery. It was amazing. And so I just thought, you know what better way to do this? I should just take this gal around the world. We should just travel the world and see the world together. So we went on a big trip. And he said, the weird thing is though we were in Cancun, I was doing some water skiing in Cancun, and I fell and I hit my head. Next thing you know, here I am. She's like, wow, that's too bad. And he's like, yeah, I know. He's like, so what's the deal? What do I got to do to get into heaven? She says, she says, it is so easy. All you have to do is just spell one word correctly. And he's like, really? What's the word? And she smiles at him and she says, I want you to please spell Czechoslovakia. Which is spelled CZ, not CH. I mean, so I'll give you that much of a hint if you want to get into heaven. Anyway, that's a good lead-in to this series that we're starting. We're in part 1. You're here at the right time. We're at the beginning of a series called Heaven. Who's in? Who's in? Who makes it? And that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk over the next 3 weeks about heaven and what it takes. How do we get there? What's the road? What does it take to get into heaven? And I did a little research and did a little study on this, and I found something fascinating. This is fascinating. Even though religious affiliation and church attendance is gone way down over the last few decades, surveys show that an overwhelming majority of Americans believe in heaven. Most Americans believe in a heaven or an afterlife of some sort. Even though they have a lot of doubts and a lot of questions about God, and there's still a lot of mystery about that, most Americans believe that there is something good on the other side of this life. And here's the interesting thing, they are confident that they are going to go there after they die. They believe that they're going to make it. They're like, yeah, in the end, I believe that it's all just going to work out. That's how I'm in heaven. I believe that. Now, before that happens, I got to, oh my gosh, I got to go work out, right? Or I got to go to work. I got things to do. I got to go ride my mountain bike because, I really don't have much time on my hands to think about how it'll actually work out and why it'll work out, but I just assume it will. I just assume it's all going to work out. And I think that depicts most Americans, that they just we know that the end is coming, and we just assume that we're going to make it. In fact, there are two big assumptions that fuel this confidence that people have about going to heaven. The first one is this. The first assumption is that most people believe that good people get to go to heaven. Right? Most people think that good people go to heaven. And the second assumption is I'm a good person. I'm good enough. I'm going. I'm in, right? I think that's how it is. The average American's like, I believe that good people go to heaven. I'm not sure where bad people go. I don't want to really think about that. But good people definitely go to heaven, and I'm a good person, so I'm going to heaven. I'm also a very busy person, and like I said, I don't have a lot of time to really think this through and think about this stuff, but I'm pretty certain when time comes, I'm in. And I think that's the assumption. And I realize some Christians would push back on that assumption a little bit. Some believers might push back on it. But you would have to admit that there are many, many people who kind of embrace some form of that philosophy. That we all kind of believe aspects of that. And so I thought, hey, we're in church. This would be a good place to talk about this a little bit. And so today what I'm going to do is I'm just going to build a foundation for the rest of this series. And my hope is that we'll little by little build a stairway to heaven. There's a connection now for you. That's all right. So now here's the thing. This thought, this approach, there are actually some really good thoughts about this good people go to heaven thing. There's a few advantages to this idea that good people are in and I'm a good person theory. The first advantage is that it basically seems fair. It seems fair. This idea that, what I mean is that it makes sense that good people would get to go to the good place after this is all over. That makes sense to most of us. Other than a few differing opinions, there's a general agreement in our world that there are good people and there are bad people that exist in this world, and it's only fair that the good people get to go to heaven, right? And so that makes sense to most of us when we think about fairness and all that. The second advantage to this assumption is that you make the cut, right? You are in. Why? Because you're a good person, right? You're a good person. In fact, some of you are not just good, you're amazing. Let me just say what you're thinking. You're really amazing. You're wonderful. I mean, some of you really kind of exceed the norm. I mean, none of us would admit this, and I get this. None of us would say this out loud, but because we don't like to judge. But you know this, that in those little quiet moments when you're with yourself and you're thinking about yourself and other people, you know that you are better than. And when you think about it, you're definitely better than. Don't look at him right now, but just oh God, yeah. I mean, we just all have that feeling that we're, every now and then we meet someone that's really amazing. We run into someone that's truly amazing, and we're like, wow, they are an amazing person. Gosh, I wish I'm not as amazing as them. And then so to make yourself feel better, you're going, but at least I'm not like all these turkeys. Right? I'm above average, and that's my point, is that we don't say these things out loud, but in our minds, we all kind of think and kind of assume, you know what, I'm pretty good. Pretty good, and I'm going to make the cut. Whatever the cut is, I'm going to make it into heaven when it's all over. The third advantage of this idea that good people get to go to heaven is that it supports the notion of a good God, which is something that we all kind of believe. I mean, for the most part, humans believe in a quote-unquote good God. You can go all over this world, and you won't find any theology that believes in a bad God. I mean, that doesn't exist. People inherently believe that if there is a God, he is good. And if this good God is going to populate heaven, then he's definitely going to populate it with good people. People like you and me. Right? So it makes sense. Now, there is one other reason that this is a popular theory, and it's ancillary. In other words, it makes sense to us, and you could think that if someone came up with this idea, this is the reason why they did it. The fourth one is this, is that the fear of not going to heaven should motivate people to be good. Right? I mean, I better be good, right? I mean, if there's an afterlife and if there's some sort of cosmic referee who's kind of keeping score of all the good things that we're doing, that should be motivating. That should motivate you and I to be, a little extra kind, a little more generous, a little bit nicer, right? If that's how it is, right? I mean, since there is this payoff of some kind, hopefully it will encourage more people to be more good, because they want to go to the good place in the end. And so that's good for society. And you could go, okay, this all makes sense. And so, again, all of this sounds good at first blush. But let me just suggest to you that when you get beneath the surface of this and you dig a little deeper and you think about it, it falls apart pretty quickly. It doesn't hold water. It's actually a little absurd. Let me show you. When you think about it, there are some realities that you and I know that are true in this world that kind of debunk this philosophy. For example, number one, we have no agreed upon standard of good. None of us agree exactly on what is totally good behavior, right? I mean, there is no indisputable, universally agreed upon standard of good behavior. We just don't have it. And so if God is going to let us into heaven based on our goodness, you would think that this God would have made sure that we all knew what quote-unquote goodness actually is. That there ought to be some manual or some list that tells us that's kind of multi-generational and universally agreed upon, some standard of goodness that we all agree on, but there is not. There isn't. There's not an agreement on this. Concepts of morality and justice and goodness have varied greatly throughout human history and all over the world. There's just diversity. I mean, what was self-evident to us, what is self-evident to you and I here in 2025, wasn't necessarily self-evident to people who lived 1,000 years ago or 500 years ago or even 50 years ago, right? A great example of this is to consider the treatment of women throughout history in our world. Today, we consider men and women to be equal, but that wasn't always true. That wasn't always so. Think about it. Not long ago, it was considered self-evident that men were definitely a superior species to women, and everyone knew that. It's just the way it was. Now, today, we know that that's bad. That's bad thinking. And so my question is how did men who thought that way 100 years ago or 50 years ago get into heaven? I mean, that's bad. How did they get into heaven? Well, I don't know. Maybe they didn't get a go because they've been wrong all that time. You could do it this way. Think about our modern view of equality for all people, regardless of their race or color. I mean, that's how we see the world now, but that wasn't always the way it was. I mean, think about this. Think about the world's view, how the world's view of slavery has changed dramatically. Maybe over the last 150 years, it's changed. Today, slavery is universally abhorred. But for centuries and centuries, in every culture around the world, it was okay to own slaves. No big deal. That's just normal. And so, again, if slavery was quote-unquote bad, who could have made it to heaven before the 16th, 17th century came around? No one. They were wrong and they were out. So my point is this. This is my point. That good is a moving target. Right? What is good? There are things, it's a moving target, and it's always been a moving target. It's a moving target culturally. I mean, in our culture, I can't keep up with what's good today versus what was good a year ago, right? It's a moving target generationally. Every generation comes along and redefines goodness for themselves. Nationally, every country is defining good. It's even a moving target personally in your own life. If you were honest, there are things that bug you today that used to not bug you. There are things that you think are bad today that you used to didn't think so bad. And vice versa. There are things that you used to think that were really bad, and you're like, oh, big whoop now, right? And so the question I'm having is how do we know what is good, right? There is no consensus, right? That word is constantly changing, and every generation that comes along redefines good and bad for themselves. And so who says, right? Now, some of you, you might say, well, wait a second, Pastor Troy. You should know better. The Bible. The Bible is our standard of good. The Bible tells us the difference between good and bad and right and wrong. And so that's really our standard. And I would probably agree with you, except let me warn you. If you are using the Bible as your standard to get to heaven, you're not going to make the cut, buddy. I mean, you're not going to get there. It's hard. I mean, for example, some of you might say, hey, the 10 Commandments, even the simplest. I believe in the 10 Commandments. 10 Commandments are my standard of good. This is how we are to live our lives. I follow the 10 Commandments. To which I say, when I hear that, go, can you name them first? Because no one does. No one knows them. I mean, most people, when they say they believe in the 10 Commandments, can't name 5 if their eternity depended on it. They couldn't name maybe 6, right? I mean, maybe you know them all. But for the most part, the 10 Commandments, the problem with them is that no one knows them all. But the bigger one is that no one keeps them all. No one. I mean, they're just 10. And no one can do it. I promise you, I'm telling you, this is a pretty moral crowd that we have gathered here, big one. I promise you, there is not one single person in this whole room who can honestly say that they have kept the 10 Commandments or are keeping the 10 Commandments. Not one. No one. And so, how do commandment followers make it to heaven? Those of you who are following him. It's a good question. Here's a fun fact that I bet you didn't know. In the book of Exodus, which is the second book in the Old Testament, Genesis, Exodus, in the book of Exodus, this is also where we get the list of the 10 Commandments. That's where the 10 Commandments are introduced to us. In the entire book of Exodus, there is not one mention of heaven. It doesn't say anything about heaven there. In other words, my point is that there is no correlation. There is no connection between the 10 Commandments that God gave the Jews and them going to heaven. In fact, the Old Testament, if you read the rest of the Old Testament, it doesn't really have a clear theology of a heaven or an afterlife. It's really gray. It's funky. You just don't see it. In fact, it's kind of sad when every now and then someone dies, we're told that they go to this place called Sheol. And we're like, what's that? I don't know what that is. Most Bible scholars don't really know what or where Sheol is. It's just this place of the dead or that are just kind of there. And the Old Testament doesn't tell us. And it certainly is not heaven. It does not, it is different from heaven. So my point is all throughout the Old Testament, you and I are giving these laws and these commandments to follow, but there's no connection to heaven if we do. You don't see it. And the New Testament is actually worse because the New Testament is full of references to heaven. It talks about heaven. In fact, there are more mentions of heaven in the New Testament than any other piece of ancient literature that we have, by far, okay? But here's the thing. It's kind of a tease when it talks about heaven. If you've read the New Testament, you know this, that one of the main messages of the New Testament is basically this: good luck. Good luck. If you're trying to get to heaven by being good luck. You're doomed, actually. You're not going to make it. So that doesn't help us. I mean, just an example. Look at what the Apostle Paul wrote in Romans chapter 3, verse 10. And before I read this to you, I want you to remind you of what Paul was. Paul was a Jew, a pretty good Jew, which is, very rigorous moralistic society. And not only that, Paul was a Pharisee, which made him one of the goodest Jews around. I mean, he was the goodest of the good, right? But if you know his story, due to some weird, surprising circumstances, Paul became a follower of Jesus. surprised everybody because he was very zealous about his religion. He became a follower of Jesus. And when he began to understand the message of Jesus, this is what he wrote the church in Rome in Romans 3:10. He said this, "There is no one righteous. No, not even one. There is no one who is good. There's no one that is good enough." And then in verse 20, he goes further. He says, get this, "For no one can ever be made right with God by doing what the law commands." The law simply shows us how sinful we are, right? In other words, Paul's saying, following the commandments will not lead you to heaven. Paul says that following the law basically will just show you that you're kidding yourself if you think you can be good enough to go. My point is that contrary to popular opinion, the Bible does not give you and I a magic list of things that we can do in order to climb our way to heaven. It doesn't do that. And if you think it does, I respectfully challenge that you have not actually read it. So, the first problem with this good people go to heaven theory is that we have no agreed upon standard of what good is. Who knows what that is? The second problem with this good people go to heaven theory is that we don't know what percentage of our actions have to be good in order to make the cut. I mean, how good do we have to be, right? I mean, think about it. Is it kind of like one of those high school tests that you at least have to get 70% on in order to pass, right? Or is it maybe more like 50%, which was how I did high school, right? I mean, if I made it more, I'm so happy if I made it more than half. Or does God grade on a curve? Does he kind of take into account and then go, okay, I'll lower it down a little bit. My point is how good, we don't know, we have no idea how good is good enough to make it. If we agree, we just don't know. And think about what that means. That means this is kind of scary, that you and I could miss getting into heaven by just one single deed. If we don't know, well, we don't know, right? I mean, one single infraction could be the difference between getting in or not. And so some of you are like, oh my gosh, man, I should have not lost my temper talking to that customer service agent on the phone yesterday, yelling at her because I might not make it in. Because that one thing, I mean, that doesn't seem fair. I mean, one little bad deed could drop you below and you fail, man. That doesn't, and not only that, we also don't know if our thoughts and our motives actually count against us. You know what I'm saying? We don't know if they're included in this. I mean, is it what we do that counts most to God, or is it more about why we do it? That counts and matters. And if it is that, I'm in trouble because I got some wicked thoughts going through my head, especially about you all. And not only that, when does God actually start keeping count of our goodness? I mean, does he wait until we're grown up a little bit? When we're 4 or 5, I'm just a ball of selfishness. I ain't doing nothing for nobody. But when does he start counting? At what age do our good deeds actually start to count? My hope is that it's sometime after 50. Because I've been pretty good the last 6 years, man. I'm rocking it. I put together a little resume, but the first 50, it was just all about me. I don't know about you. But and here's the other thing that this reveals is that, again, you think about this, just makes sense, that some of us, we could literally be out of time and not know it. In other words, we may be past the point of return. Some of you have maybe done so many bad things in your life that you don't have enough time now to make up for all the crud that you've done before. I mean, that's tough. In other words, some of us right now are doomed, and we don't know it. You're still doing good. You're going to church and dressing up and got your big Bible, and God's putting a little star next to your name up on his little chart on his refrigerator. Good job. And you're out a long time ago. That's bad. This is crazy, this idea when you start thinking about it. It's like, where do I land up in here? But in my opinion, here's the biggest problem with this whole gotta be good to get into heaven system. And that is this. Think about it. You got to think here. If good people go to heaven, if there's some sort of cosmic scale that God uses to determine goodness, but God never took the time to explain to us what good actually is or how good we actually need to be to get in, if that's how he did it, then I'll just tell you, God is not good. I mean, that's how he did it. God's not good. I mean, for example, what do you call a teacher who doesn't give you any notes, any lectures, any reading assignments, and just gives you a final exam? Doesn't even tell you the date. It's a pop final exam. Do you call that teacher good? No. What do you call a boss who is, evaluating your performance, but he does it without giving you his expectations or giving you an actual job description so you know what you're supposed to do? Do you call that boss good? No way. No way. If good people go to heaven, but God does this good thing like that, then God's not good. That's not fair, right? He's not fair, it's not just, and it's not good. Now, I have thought about this. If God was actually good, he would show up and he would tell us. He would tell us. If God was actually good, he would show up on this planet in every century and to every generation, and he would give us an updated version of what he expects, of what good is, right? He would maybe today, if he came, he would give us all a little zip drive that has a little updated upgrade, that we could download that gives us a new specs of what goodness is. It would be titled Good Enough 2025 version, right? We're like, oh, now I know how to be good today. 10 years ago is different, but that would be helpful. That would be fair. But this other thing seems like we're just it's absurd. It's absurd. And here's the problem. This is kind of a big deal. We're talking about eternity. The problem with eternity is that it goes on forever. Reference to Sandlot for those of you who are old. It goes on forever. This is big. This is the big one. We all know that this life ends and we have a sense of it's going to be over in a little while. I don't know. I got a few more years left. But eternity goes on forever. And boy, we'd want to get this right? We really need to know. God, how are we supposed to sleep at night when we begin to think this? This is why a lot of people don't want to think about it. Because we kind of end at a place of I don't know. And you'd think God would help us. What are we supposed to do with this? What are we supposed to say at funerals? Get up and you go, yeah, Joe was a good man. He was good enough for us. Sure hope he's good enough for heaven. But we don't know. Who wants to hear that? And the preacher gets up at the end of funerals. I do funerals all the time. I always end with, hey, let us pray now. The preacher gets up and he has to say this prayer. Let us pray right now to the God who has completely left us in the dark about where we actually stand when it comes to eternity. Amen. That's stupid. It's crazy. And what do we tell our children? How do we give them some sort of hope? I don't know. In fact, I read an article recently by a psychotherapist, famous one, and she's an author. Her name is Erica Kamazar. She said this, and I quote, she said, I am often asked by parents, how do I talk to my child about death if I don't believe in God or heaven? Good question. What do you say? Well, this is what she said. She said, my answer is always the same. Lie. Modern day psychology, lie. She says, the idea that you simply die and turn to dust may work okay for some adults, but it doesn't help children. She said this, she ends this, she says, belief in heaven helps them grapple with the tremendous and incomprehensible loss that death ultimately brings. I thought about ending my sermon with that. I thought I'd just end, right? I like to do, sometimes, I don't know about you, but I like cliffhanger sermons where you just cut it off and everybody's like, what happens next? But I don't know if you do, but I love it. And so I thought, I could end the sermon right here, and I would just basically say, so, what should we do? And then I would say, well, don't miss part 2. Come back next week and we'll all take a peek. On Sunday, July 27, we'll see what God needs from us for us to go to heaven. That's pretty good, yeah? Maybe you didn't like that. I knew you wouldn't like it, so I'm not going to do that. I thought I would end that way, and so I thought, here's how I'll end instead. I'm going to tell you what Jesus said about this. Now, I get that some of you, just because he said it doesn't mean much to you, that doesn't make it true just because Jesus said it, and I get that. But this is what Jesus said, and this is what Jesus taught in his ministry and throughout his ministry, and maybe it'll resonate, I don't know. But Jesus basically taught this, that good people don't go to heaven. That's what he taught. Good people don't go to heaven. Over and over and over again, Jesus taught that it's not the good people who get to go to heaven. and here's the fascinating thing. He taught that, but at the same time, he taught his followers that they should be good and that they should do good to each other and even to their enemies. How do you rationalize that? That's crazy. And if you read the New Testament, if you actually read it, you'll notice that it's clear. Jesus believed that human beings are capable of knowing the difference between good and evil. He believed that in our hearts, we know what's right and what's wrong. That's there. And he expected us to choose good, to do good. But then, when he taught about goodness, it's interesting, he raised the bar on what should be considered good to a whole new level. I mean, he is speaking to one of the most moral societies, one of the most rigid, moralistic societies that ever existed. And he's like, you guys say this is good, but I say it's here. And everybody's like, oh gosh, really? We're never going to make it. That's fascinating. He taught that what good is so much higher and worse than you think. But here's the other thing. Not once in his entire ministry did he teach that if you're good, you get to go to heaven. So he raised the bar on being good, but he didn't really connect it to that'll get you to heaven. Now that's just not what I would have expected, and it's not what I did when I started studying Jesus. It just blew my mind. That's not what you would expect him to say. And here's something else that is strange. So weird. But it's true nonetheless. This is true. At the end of Jesus' ministry, some good people, some religious people, Pharisees, teachers of the law, some good people conspired with some bad people, the Romans, and they worked together in order to kill Jesus. That's true. Good people got together with the bad people, and they both decided, one thing we got to do, get Jesus dead. And they crucified him. But Jesus had the last word on this. It's fascinating. While he was hanging on a cross and about to die, Jesus turned to a very bad man who was hanging on a cross next to him, and he said this, hey man, hey, I'll see you on the other side. What? I mean, you have this, the juxtaposition, it couldn't be more drastic. You got the most moral, perfect person who ever lived, good person who ever lived, hanging on a cross about to die next to a very bad man, a thief, a criminal, someone whose own society said, we must put him out of our misery. And he's saying, hey, today you and I, we're going to be in paradise together. What? Wow, I don't know about you, but that is amazing. And it gives me hope because I'm a bad monkey. I feel more like that guy than that guy. And so, listen to me, if Jesus is who his first century followers claimed that he is, then that little conversation is good news for you and I. If Jesus is who he said he is and who they said he is, then you and I don't have to lie to our children or our grandchildren about this. That when you and I lose a loved one, when we're at a funeral, when we're grieving, we can have some hope, knowing that we are going to see them again, that we will see them on the other side. Not because they were good or because we are good, but because he is good. He's so much gooder than we could have imagined. So one of Jesus' followers was a young man named John. And he followed Jesus around, and at the end of his life, he kind of wrote down what he saw and heard. And to encapsulate all of it, he kind of summarized it in one line. And he famously wrote these words in John 3:16. He said, "For God so loved the world that," and before I read you the rest of what he said, I'll tell you what he basically says. He says, "For God so loved the world that God showed up in person down here to show you and I the way to heaven. In fact, he said, 'I am the way.'" Now think about that. When he showed up, he didn't come down here and he gave us all a list of things to do in order for you and I to climb that ladder to heaven and to make it. He didn't give us a list. He gave us himself. This is crazy. And so what John said is, "For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever," love this, "believes." Doesn't say behaves, is good enough. But whoever believes in their heart, in him, shall not be lost to God, but have eternal life. In other words, regardless of what you've done or what you haven't done, if you trust what Jesus has done, you make it in. What? Again, that's just not what you and I expect. Instinctively, we're like, no, I got to do it. I got to do it. I'm an American. I will make it happen. No. And like I said, John, after all these years walking with Jesus, he's writing this down. And when he wrote this down and he's summing up everything, I think John had a premonition. I think he saw something happen in the future, and he realized that as simple and as clear as that last line was, he knows that humans have a tendency to mix things up and to complicate things. And so he added this next line, which doesn't get talked about a lot. But he's like, just in case you misunderstood, let me write you John 3:17, which says, "For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world," which is what the world thinks that we think. Because the way we treat the world often, we condemn our neighbors and our friends. But he's like, no. God did not come to condemn the world. He came to just save it through himself. Not through what you would do. I mean, in other words, he did it. He saved the world. God didn't send us a to-do list so that we could try to save ourselves. He didn't send us a to-do list. He sent us a who instead of a to-do. He sent us a who, and he saved us through him. Through him. Isn't that fascinating? Did you know that? Man. This begs the question. What should we do? Don't miss part 2 of Heaven Who's In. Yeah? Come back next week. Come back next week, because this is going to get better. And let me just tell you, I want to challenge you, don't come alone. Because you and I know people who don't know this. And if they knew this, this would blow their minds. It would change everything. It would bring them hope in this world that doesn't have a lot of hope. So bring a friend, encourage you to share this cool thing that we're going to talk about as we talk about heaven next week. All right? Hey, before I let you go, let me take a couple announcements. Today and all throughout the summer, we've called it kind of our summer of baptism because we get the river and everybody loves to get baptized in the river because it's so beautiful over there. And so every couple of weeks we've been going over and baptizing. And I just want to encourage you, if you're here today and at some point in your life you decided to become a follower of Jesus, not a Christian, because as an American, we're all Christian. But if you've decided, no, Jesus is my Lord, and I'm following him, and I'm walking in his way, but you have not been baptized, he said the first thing you should do when you do that is to get baptized. There's something about doing that. And I get it. Getting wet in front of a group of people sounds a little awkward. The wet look is not my best look. But God knows better. And when we do this, we're basically sharing our greatest hope. We're saying, like Jesus, I'm alive, but one day I am going to die, and they're going to bury me. But I'm not going to stay that way. That because of my faith in Jesus, I have hope that God is going to raise me from the dead, just like he did Jesus. And so that's what we do in baptism. You go down and you come up. We don't just take you down and leave you there. We're like, come on up. Because that's our hope. That's what we're sharing with the world. And so if you have decided to follow Jesus, but you have not been baptized and you do it, that's your next step. And so we want to invite you. We're going to go over the river. We have a young man, Carson. Where's he at? Right there? Yeah, he's going to get baptized. Look at him. He's like, I'm in. All right, he's ready to go. And his family's here. We're going to baptize you in a little bit. You're going to hear why he is getting baptized. I want to invite some of you to come on over if you got 5-10 minutes to watch that. But if you would like to get baptized, if today is your day, we've got towels, we got T-shirts, we got shorts, we got everything you need. You just need to drop your excuses and do what your Lord told you to do. Amen? Maybe you're like, well, I already been baptized when I was 3 months old. I get it. But that's not how it works. It's your decision. That wasn't your decision. That was your parents. And you're like, well, I don't want to violate what my parents. No, your parents' intention when they baptized you at 3.5 is that one day you would be a follower of Jesus. And now that you've decided to do that, the next thing you should do is get baptized. Am I making sense here? So encourage you. Today could be your day. We'd love to share that with you. If not, we'll be doing it in a couple weeks. Did you have a good day at church today? Me too, guys. Love you. If you need someone to talk to, you need someone to pray with, I'll hang out down here. But we're headed over there to the river in a few minutes. God bless you guys. Don't miss part 2. We'll see you.